Welcome to Represents. Today's guest is Ottawa's pianist, John Kofi Dapaah, a fascinating figure in the musical landscape here in Ottawa. How are you?
I'm doing all great. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the
Thanks
show.
for being with me. Thank you. So let's talk about your let's start talking about your musical journey and your influences. You began playing piano in Japan under
Yes,
Tabushi Masako. And I think you've since developed a rich musical career spanning classical to jazz. Can you share more about your early experience in Japan and
for
how it
sure.
shaped your musical identity and challenges, and also how you faced the transitioning from a young pianist with a speech impediment to a professional musician?
For sure. So first of all, I was born in Ghana in West Africa,
Hmm.
and lived there for about 5, 6 years. And then when I was 6 years old, I moved to Japan with my family. And that was my father, mother, and two younger brothers.
Hmm.
And we moved there because my dad was doing schooling there. I believe he was doing his graduate studies. Um, and when we moved there, the church that we started attending, the pastor's wife was a pianist and a piano teacher. So I started studying with her, and I studied with her um, until we moved to Ottawa, which was about 5 years. And so that's where I kind of gained my foundation in piano. Um, and then when we moved to Ottawa, I was about 12 or 13. And then we started attending the church. It was a Ghanaian church. And at that time, they were actually looking for a keyboardist. And I was about 13, and I did not want to be a church keyboardist at that age. But then I accepted it. And so like I played at that church for a while. And that also helped me to kind of find my improvisational voice, because that's something that I was not taught at the in Japan. And then after that, I did my um, bachelor's at Carleton, and I did a year of exchange studies in Austria, and then a few years ago, I did my master's at McGill, and that's basically my musical training in a nutshell.
That's amazing. It's quite the international experience there, which is great because in a sense that's what Represents is all about, talking about diversity and experiences all around the globe. So
For
this is
sure.
great. So let's talk about your studio. You have your studio, Piano Place,
Yes.
and you've been teaching a diverse group of students. How do you approach teaching music to foster creativity and passion? And especially for students who might not see, well, actually, who might see you as a role model in a field where it's very underrepresented,
Mm,
talking about us,
for,
blacks in general.
for sure. Yeah, I think for me, when it comes to teaching, I generally follow what's called the RCM, which stands for the Royal Conservatory of Music. It's a curriculum that most piano students and music students in Canada kind of follow. It's very heavy on the classical studies. So like I follow that, but I also try to integrate some basic jazz training with my students, which is something that I've heard a lot of students say that that's one unique thing that they get from studying with me, is that I try to teach them from both angles. And I think it's important because it's important for students to have a good basis and good techniques and everything in music. But then if they can't find their voice in that, which is to start creating their own things and start to learn to improvise, I think that kind of does them a bit of a disservice. So then I started to teach everybody like at least a bit of jazz, and like it's fun to see that side of their music come out of them, right?
Mhm.
Um, and and in terms of um, being a representative of the Black culture in music, in classical music especially, it's very much an honor because it's something that I myself didn't have when I was coming up uh, here in the music industry. And so when I have kids who tell me that they look up to me in that standpoint, like I take that as a huge honor, and it does mean a lot to me, and it, it brings me great joy to see a lot of students of color come to me to study, and to see them thrive, and to see them feel like, like they are supposed to be here. That it's not something that's not for them, right? So it's great to see that for sure.
That's amazing. So you know what, John? Or obviously, okay, young kids, your students, they look up to you. Who did you look up to when you were growing up? Especially, I'm talking about, here in Canada, actually.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are lots of people that I looked up to. I feel like in terms of the professional side, I looked up to like a pianist by the name of Oscar Peterson. I'm sure you know of Oscar Peterson. And I actually started studying about Oscar Peterson in my first year of university at Carleton.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just started studying jazz. And as I was getting to study more of his things, I actually remember, like, I was driving to a lesson at my teacher's place, and I was listening to the CBC, and they just talked about how Oscar Peterson just passed away, and I was like, oh my god, like, like it felt like somebody that I knew, even though I'd never met him, I'd never done anything, right? But then as I was getting to know more about him and his music, like it broke me, right? But then I've always looked up to his playing and just his like ability to communicate his ideas on the piano. It's amazing, right? And I've looked up to a lot of profs that I studied with, which I'm still in contact with, and also like a lot of my peers too. So it's kind of all around that. Like, I try and find inspiration wherever I am.
I love how musicians like yourselves always, have a beauty in putting words together. I got stuck in what you said, you know, the way he puts, his ideas together, Can you break that down for me?
Yeah, I mean, if you hear somebody play or somebody improvise, it's a part of them that's coming out in their music, right? So, like, say if I'm playing something, if I'm improvising on a song, if I'm having a bad day, like that's gonna come out in the playing, as opposed to if I play the same thing, if I try to improvise on the same idea, but if I was having a more happy or upbeat day, like that also gonna come out in the music that I create. So it's essentially like communicating. It truly is, and it's never gonna be the same. It's never gonna be the same. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's something that's happening in real time, right? And that's why it's important for me to teach students how to improvise, because it's a huge part of the musical voice that, if not tapped into, it kind of goes to waste.
Wow, wow. Can you break down how do you go about, teaching someone how to improvise? In a can you do that in 20 seconds?
For sure. I mean, so I've actually created a jazz course online that I teach the basics of improvising, like at a starter level. So if it's a student that's never tried to improvise, I have 3 patterns that I have them try to play, and then we kind of use those 3 patterns to start improvising using those 3 patterns, and then I have them create their own patterns to add to it, right? And eventually, like, it's to get to the point where they don't have to think about creating a new pattern, but the pattern just comes up, and then they are able to incorporate it as they play, right? So that's how I try to teach improvising.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Speaking about, the music, I know you perform your own compositions,
Mm.
correct? And I know you perform at the NAC, the National Arts Center, for those who are not familiar with Ottawa. Can you talk about your creative process and for composing music and how you blend different musical traditions in your work?
Yeah. So when it comes to composing, and also I guess arranging too, to a certain extent, I I try to start with one idea, a theme. It could be a melody, it could be a chorus, and I start by just improvising on it. Right. It could be something as simple as "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star" or "Mary Had a Little Lamb." It could be anything really, and I just start to improvise on it. And as I improvise, there are, ideas that catch my eye, and so like I make a note of that, like a mental note of that. Sometimes I jot it down, um, and then I eventually come back to those things, and then try to string a story, on that, and then through trial and error, like in the end, it eventually becomes its own piece, if that makes sense.
That's amazing. I can only imagine the freedom of the creation. You wake up middle of the night, hey, I have something in mind.
That
I
does
need to
happen
put
sometimes.
it.
That does happen sometimes. It does.
That's what happened. So
At times it does happen. I mean, so trying to think of something. Okay, a few years ago, I recorded and released a Christmas jazz album with my trio and two amazing singers, Roxanne Goodman and Michael Curtis Hannah. And for one of the pieces, it's something that we've played for a while, but an idea of trying to blend like a section of the piece into a classical melody. So like it's in the song "Joy to the World," right? And then I put a section in there where it's literally a classical piece in it, and it's hard to explain, but it's something you have to go listen to. But it came to me during the night, like I remember clearly. But yeah, like it's something like that.
that's amazing. I love hearing about the creative process of an artist, when, the ideas come and how they proceed to actually, put the ideas, as you said, into, how to express themselves on
For
the piano.
sure.
That's great. So, listen, talk to me about. I know you're up to a great concert that's going to be held here in Ottawa. I believe it's June 29th. Tell me about the concert, and where it's going to be held and all the details.
Yeah, for sure. So as you said, the concert is on June 29th. It's the Saturday before Canada Day, and it's called Afro Jazz. And we're going to be playing a lot of Afrobeats songs, jazz songs with African grooves to it. And the ensemble is quite amazing. It's actually like on drums we have Joe Boateng, who I've actually known since he was a baby. That's a long story there. And then on bass we have Kaylin Penny, who is probably one of the best bassists in Ottawa. Then on guitar there is Trevor Lubin, who I've known since high school. We used to jam together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I have two special guests. On saxophone we have Jay Wura, and on voice we have Samantha Francois, who is joining us for a few songs. And basically, the concert is going to be a party. It's going to be a party. I'm trying to get the audience to sing along, to dance, to just enjoy themselves. Really, it's going to be held at the First Unitarian Congregation in Westboro, and tickets are available on my site and also on my Instagram. And I believe on the link below, like.
Yeah, I'll share it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's gonna be a party basically.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Where did the concept come from? Introducing Afro beats into piano and jazz.
yeah. So I've known Sarah Onyango for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I had an interview with her a couple of years ago, she said that like I should really like think about doing an African album or a concert. I'm like, like I will one day, right? And then the opportunity just presented itself this year, and I'm like, you know what? I think it's time where I try it. That and so then I like thought about it in I believe January or February, and then I assembled the group together, and then we started working on it, and it's been a lot of fun just rehearsing for it. To be honest, it's like I truly can't wait for the concert. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it too. And shout out to Sarah Onyango,
Yeah,
a lady who I have a lot of respect for. I know very well, and it's great that she was able to spark,
for
that.
sure. Yeah, yeah. That's what she does. That's what she does.
That's what she does. Listen, John, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for for taking time to explain a little bit of your background and talking about the concert. I invite everyone to actually attend, participate, and support this amazing talent that we have here in
Thank you,
Ottawa.
thank you,
You know, and all the best to you.
thanks so much for having me, man. It's an honor.
My pleasure.